want, regardless of who it is?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they're fairly similar, I guess you could say, in terms of they're both big, strong kids that have some skills running the ball and have some skills throwing the ball. I mean, you know, obviously there are varying degrees of both of those skills with those kids, but I don't see a drastic difference in terms of what you would do with one as opposed to the other.
Looked like Carroll, Bradshaw, Diablo made some plays out there as the receivers. Is that encouraging to see those guys making plays behind Ford and Phillips?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously today was an opportunity for some of those young guys, or maybe the lesser-known guys, to get more reps and go against good people. You know, Adonis and Stroman are out there at corner, and we've got those guys you mentioned out there competing against them. And I think it's a great opportunity for them. That's how we build it. You know, I mean, obviously we weren't going to have a couple of the names that everybody knows out there today on the offensive side of the ball. And we tried to look at it as a great opportunity for those young guys to get in there and go compete. While they certainly weren't perfect, they made a couple plays here and there, and you know, did their best to hold their own against some pretty good guys out there on the edge.
Justin in the back. Obviously, an up-tempo offense is what you're bringing here to Virginia Tech. Was there a set amount of plays that you wanted to run, and overall, did you feel like the team matched the tempo that you wanted to see?
No, we didn't go into it with that. I mean, there was you know, I didn't want to end up with I don't know what the final number was. I asked about halfway into the fourth quarter, or maybe the start of the fourth quarter, where we were at in terms of plays with the ones and the twos, and we were in the 80s. I was more concerned about our kids taking I didn't want them to take too many reps as opposed to anything else. I mean, the tempo of it all, the tempo is a byproduct of how you execute. And when you execute, you're able to move a little bit quicker, and when you don't execute, it bogs down pretty quickly on you. But you know, we've got huge strides to make in terms of that. It doesn't mean that we can't practice fast. We're not always going to go push the tempo on offense. You know, I've said that many times. I know we've talked about it. Just I don't believe in going fast to the detriment of the other side of the ball. You know, but you know, it doesn't mean you can't practice like that all the time. I think it's much easier to slow guys up than speed them up.
Were you guys at all looking or aware of how your newcomers, or maybe Evans, who hasn't played on a stage this big before, maybe how they did or performed in front of the crowd or under that type of
Sure, that's certainly part of it. I think that was part of the neat aspect of what we had today, is that no matter how you dice it up, it is different than a practice. There's a bunch of people there watching, and I think it was good to see those kids in those environments. And we'll go back and evaluate it and take all that into consideration, but certainly that's part of it. I mean, it is a little bit different than being in the indoor with 20 people standing on the sidelines.
Justin, what's your philosophy on over here? What's your philosophy on employing multiple quarterbacks during a season? Would you do that, or is it a situation where you want to get one nailed down? And
sure. I'm open to whatever it takes to get the job done. So whether that's asking guys from the basketball team to play wide receiver, or whether that's playing multiple quarterbacks, or whether that's playing one, doesn't matter to me. Find a way to get the job done. So I've been open to all sorts of ways to do things, you know, and ultimately we'll figure out what that is by the time we play the first game.
Mike, obviously when you go in a spring game, you're fairly vanilla. You said you put in just the base for both sides. Is it natural for defense to maybe be a little ahead of offense at this point, especially when you consider they've played this defense for many years around here?
Well, I would expect that. I mean, if you just I'd be disappointed if it wasn't like that, quite honestly. So, yeah.
Now that you've seen Devin for 15 practices, is that enough for you to say that he has a spot on this team if you'd like him to play? Or?
Well, you know, Devin and I will talk about that this week. We'll do player evaluations and everything, and some of it will have to do with how Devin feels about it and how we feel. And, you know, he and I will sit down and we'll talk about all those scenarios and kind of figure out the best laid plan for him and us and kind of move forward then.
I know you want to look at what he did today before you evaluate what he did today, but in the first 14 practices, Were you pretty pleased with what you saw, or were there a lot that he needed to work on?
No, very pleased. I love the way he jumped in there. We talked about it a little bit about halfway through the spring. Just, I asked him a couple of times, said, "You having fun?" Because he's pretty quiet, and he said, "Yes, sir, I am." So I took him for his word, and he went out there and played like he was. So I'm anxious to talk to him, next week when everybody's had a chance to step away for the rest of the weekend and talk about what he wants to do and how that fits into everything we're doing.
What did you see from the running backs today? It seemed like DJ Reed got a lot of carries and actually did a lot with those carries today.
What I see from everybody, that's a position to me that we've got to continue to develop. There's a lot of guys in there that some are coming off injuries, some are coming off not playing much. Some guys have played quite a bit, and we've got to continue to develop those guys. That you saw today, they got the lion's share of the carries to see if they can be contributors to this team, and ultimately that's what we need to give us the depth that we need to be competitive in this league. It's not the first 11, it's the next guys that we've got to do a fantastic job as coaches and as a program developing through the rest of this semester and through the summer and through two-a-days. So it's kind of a long answer to a short question, but I liked what I saw from all of those guys during times in the spring, and today DJ got a few more carries. That wasn't by design, it was kind of by happenstance, but like Sam got fewer carries by design just because he's a known commodity. We need to see those other guys out there.
Thank you, Jason.
Hey, Coach, you got a handful of true freshmen that enrolled early, including those 3 wide receivers. What was kind of your impression of them throughout spring, and even especially with the receivers? Do you feel like they have already maybe done enough, or I guess as far as filling some of those voids you have at receiver, especially those guys specifically?
Well, I like those kids. That's the first thing I'll say. I think they're highly intelligent, motivated young men that want to earn playing time early. That being said, they're true freshmen. They should be going to prom, and they're out there trying to get open versus some pretty darn good Division I defensive backs. So, as a coach, you've got to take that with a grain of salt as well and understand that there's going to be a learning curve there. There's going to be, there's going to be a little bit of growing pains with those guys. Now, the good news is they're intelligent, they're hardworking, they're continuing to work on their craft. They've got to learn that this is big boy football. It's a lot different than high school, and I'm encouraged by that aspect of it. Do we have a long way to go for those guys to really be as good as the guys in front of them? Yes, we do. We have a long way to go, but I'm encouraged by the way they've gone about it.
A couple more for Coach, and then we'll have some players out in the hallway, and then bring Sam Rogers up to the podium next.
Justin, you mentioned some pretty darn good Division I corners in Stroman and Adonis. To our untrained eye, Gaines and Tremaine Edmonds also were very striking today. Just your overall assessment of the defense and what you've seen.
Yeah, I like, kind of like you said, I like our front 11, our starting 11. I think we have a chance through continued development to have a good core there. We are really, not to beat a dead horse, but we are really generating and focusing a lot of our effort on some of those young guys, and we're seeing glimpses of those good things. We're seeing them play at a high level at times, and it's very difficult to play at a high level on a consistent basis, and that's what we've got to get to with some of those young players. We don't have time for them to make freshman or sophomore mistakes. They've got to grow up literally right before our eyes in the next several months in order to give us a chance, and that's where a great bit of our focus is.
Final question, Andy.
You mentioned evaluations and talking to guys this week. Where do you leave this team at the end of spring? What do you kind of want to see from them in the summer?
Well, I want to see them finish well in the classroom. We've got finals right around the corner. Still do some lifting. That's the first thing. The second thing is they need a little bit of time off. They need to go home and eat some of Mom's good cooking and relax for a little bit and then be ready for summer one for us to have a fantastic summer. We've got to have great leadership from our older kids. We've got to have a group of younger kids that do a great job following their lead and listening to them. I think you can make humongous gains during the summertime, because we're not around as much. strength and conditioning coach. Coach Hilgert's around them on a consistent basis, but we're obviously limited in our contact with them. So there's much more onus on the team. So we'll find out how mature we truly are throughout the summertime. But it's imperative that we have a fantastic summer with these classes.